How do you respect the original in a remake? Well, you can't. At the end of the day, the ultimate sign of respect would be to just accept the original as a singular perfect work in no need of alteration. If respect is on some sort of gradient, I suppose you could say I respect 2001's Silent Hill 2 more than most then. More to the point though, even if a remake or reinterpretation of a work meets your own personal, abstract threshold of integrity or respect for its predecessor, that will only serve to validate you in the short term. At the time of writing this video, if I say The Little Mermaid, the vast majority of people probably picture the late 80s Disney animated musical, and not the fairy tale written in 1837. In 1837, movies didn't exist, and animation didn't exist. Copyright expires and the world changes, so don't be surprised if in a couple of centuries, the most well-known version of Silent Hill 2 isn't the 2001 PS2 game, or the 2024 remake, but a version of Silent Hill 2 that isn't just not a video game, but may in fact be in a medium that doesn't even exist yet. I suppose glaring into the uncaring void of the future isn't quite as satisfying as the catharsis of complaining in the immediate present. I would know, I've ranted for longer than most about certain remakes, but I'm gonna refrain from taking a blowtorch to Silent Hill 2 Remake, even though it probably deserves it, in part because I've accepted the futility of railing against the infinite future redoing everything that came before, but also just in this specific case because the intention by those involved already seems so cynical that to try and judge the merit of any of this as art seems like a farce. Any studio that offers themselves up as the ones to improve upon something as classic as Silent Hill 2, I can only imagine have to be driven by some level of presumption and hubris, and the bankrollers Konami have mostly abandoned the idea of hiring creative talent to come up with new ideas. Instead, they've decided to become almost a pure port and remake company, repackaging their back catalogue without even the veneer that it's some way to bring the stories of the past to the present in the case of its remakes, skipping straight to the numbered entries that they know have the most clout. That description of Konami sounds like the programming of an AI, and if SH2 Remake is to receive any praise, then there's no doubt in my mind a lot of gamers will be perfectly happy with AI being used to create whole games in the near future. And when it comes to remakes at least, I'm honestly prepared to just let them have that future. A limp regurgitation of something that came before, offering us little more than a thought experiment as to what something written in the language of the past might look like fed through the accepted language of the present. I actually don't know why we waste real human man-hours making this stuff. It doesn't seem like they're really needed until that new theoretical medium. We might as well let the computers turn out this kind of cultural slop. Judging by what I've seen, it seems a lot of people are already prepared for that future too. Type in a game and the words AI remake or something, and you'll find concept videos generated in AI with hundreds of thousands of views. Comments below in awe, saying it looks like exactly like what they'd want to see. Call me cynical, but I don't think the resistance against AI art can survive its results being appealing to so many people. So maybe remakes and AI are the perfect marriage. Let's just automate this recursive practice of redoing all the old games, and then have all the human creators make original products. That can end up being the good ending to all of this. In a world where we can't stop reimaginings, I would see this as a better option, so we can keep innovation trucking along, while selling people the basic modern conversions a lot of them seem to crave. After all, is there even a big difference between a human taking the original game and then mapping it onto the look of whatever the most current games look like, and a computer doing it? Well, the inevitability of remakes as the centuries roll on has caused me to not lose much sleep over the impact remakes have on the legacy of an original. That still doesn't alleviate my life in the present being overrun with this stuff at the cost of something new. 200 years later in a new medium seems like a more reasonable time and place to reimagine something than what we do these days. Right now, we're all being forced to live our life in this weird culture that loops every 20 years. There is a major difference between adaptations made centuries later and our present fast turnaround that's worth pointing out though. Nobody who's seen the 1989 Little Mermaid cartoon would claim to have an understanding of the 1837 fairy tale. Yet today remakes do seem to be sold as a way to catch up on something missed. So if you play SH2 Remake, don't kid yourself into thinking you've experienced Silent Hill 2. If that statement sounds at all offensive, I'm not sorry, because it's just a statement of fact. Violin-scored tales of how the game is inaccessible to you this minute unfortunately won't change that reality. Silent Hill 2 is a PS2 game, not an abstract concept that needs to be bent into a different shape for consumption because it's been a couple of decades. If you've seen videos or screenshots of PS2 Silent Hill 2 and were more interested in spending money to get a PS5 and the about 5 games that it has, instead of finding a way to play SH2, maybe you weren't as interested in playing it as you thought, which is fine. I'm not that desperate to read an 1837 fairy tale either, but I don't also think that a children's musical made 200 years later is a good substitute for whatever the intent of that old tale was. Silent Hill 2 Remake may look like apocalyptic cringe, but even the odd tolerable big-budget remake seem rather disposable, and feel like they're keeping us walking in place. They not only ask us to pick apart the past to decide what was worthwhile, but they also ask us to canonize what being modern means, validating the notion that the only form big-budget games can take now is one where they have an over-the-shoulder camera perspective where you hold L1 to aim and R1 to shoot, by updating everything to that same model. When people talk about modernizing a game for the 2020s, that's all they really seem to be talking about. Being modern is this one perspective and control scheme all new major games are supposed to have for some reason. All this to say, I've accepted reality, but it hasn't made my dreams any less restless. And it would be nice to wake up and be somewhere different this time.